As you hear their stories, you will discover that survivors not only have a different response to troubles, but also have a different perspective on life. Jesus never taught that Christianity is an automatic exemption from trials. In fact, difficulties are part of the price we pay for living in this world. Consider Christ's words in John chapter 16, verse 33. "These things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage, I have overcome the world." Notice that Jesus didn't say that we would live without problems. Instead, he offers us a way to thrive despite our problems. In Courageous, we will discover 10 survival strategies that Christians must use to navigate the tumultuous terrain of today's world. My prayer is that this audiobook will strengthen your courage by serving as a kind of spiritual compass to guide you, with true north pointing to Christ. Survival tip number 1. Don't panic. The flight from Columbus, Ohio to Los Angeles, California was routine. Aboard U.S. Airways Flight 1493, David Koch sat shoeless in first-class compartment seat 2A. As the airliner neared Los Angeles International Airport, he looked out the window as the sun began to set over the Pacific Ocean. They would be landing soon. I probably ought to put on my shoes, he thought, but he decided to wait. On their final approach, David watched the sun sink below the horizon. Moments later, he felt the familiar jolt and heard the screech of tires as the 737 jumbo jet, carrying 83 passengers and 6 crew members, touched down on LAX's runway 24 left. Then David heard a sudden, sickening crunch. Sparks hurtled past his window, followed by the bright flash of a fireball. Screams filled the aircraft as a flight attendant shouted, "Stay down!" As the plane skidded along the runway, David unbuckled his seat belt to prepare for a quick exit. The plane came to a violent stop, and another explosion rocked the cabin, throwing him forward into the first row of seats and then into the bulkhead. The fuselage went dark and began filling with smoke. No instructions came from the pilot or flight attendants. Passengers were on their own, running toward the back of the plane. "I immediately got on my hands and knees and attempted to find my shoes," David recalled. "I believed it would be difficult to escape a burning plane in my stocking feet, but his shoes were nowhere to be found." Trying to stay under the smoke, David crawled toward the back of the plane. In a panic, other passengers trampled him. "I encountered a fighting, frenzied mob jamming the aisle," he later said. "Escape was probably impossible, because I was last in line to get out the rear exit. I concluded that I was probably going to die. At that point I stood up and, choking heavily on smoke, walked back toward the first-class section. I was not panicked, nor was I terrified," David remembered. He was resigned. "For a few long moments I stood there, immobilized, not knowing what else to do, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was going to die." Then it came to him. If smoke was coming in from the front of the plane, then there had to be an opening that might offer a way of escape. David worked his way toward the cockpit, but seeing flames lick the passenger door, he realized that was an impossible route. On the verge of passing out, he guessed he had maybe 10 or 15 seconds before he fell unconscious. He turned to the opposite wall and saw a crack in the fuselage. He wedged his fingers into it and pulled. It was the galley door, and it opened to the outside. He thrust his head through and gulped a few breaths of air. A tremendous sense of strength came over me, and a wave of adrenaline shot through my body, he said. David looked down and saw a fire burning under the airplane. To clear the flames, he jumped away from the wreckage and hit the asphalt 10 feet below. Other survivors were scattered about. Some sobbed, some were silent, and some stared in disbelief at the burning aircraft. "I consider it a miracle that I escaped," David said, "and that I came through the ordeal as well as I did." Do not panic. The number one rule in any survival situation is this: don't panic. Studies have shown that when most people, those of us without